Guan Yuk-su will spend hours sawing this natural red rock into the perfectly sized calligraphy inkstone.
그게 시시면돼요.
He sells his smaller inkstones for $750, but larger ones can cost more than $2,200. Some professional calligraphers prefer grinding their ink on an inkstone, even though they could use more affordable liquid ink. So, what makes these inkstones so expensive, and why would calligraphers still use this ancient method?
이 소리를 들어보면은 이 약간 둔탁한 소리가 나거든요. 퍽퍽퍽 약간. 근데 지금 이거는 내가 캔 돌인데 이거는 두들겨 보면은 이 맑은, 그래도 이거는 퍽퍽 소리가 이건 맑은 소리가 나죠. 이거는 좋은 돌이에요. 벼루로 쓸 수 딱 좋은 돌이에요.
The process of creating these expensive inkstones starts here, just 12 kilometers away from Hyuk-su's workshop in Jincheon, South Korea. This is where he collects the red stone for his prized calligraphy inkstones.
아, 이거 도로 좋은데 너무 커. 가져가고 싶은데.
Hyuk-su avoids stones that have been exposed to air as they make for poor inkstones. It's important that the stone isn't cracked and the surface is as uniform as possible. The type of stone Hyuk-su uses, Sangsan Jasok, is only available here. When he finds a stone that meets all of his qualifications and is easy enough to lift, he heads back to his workshop in Jincheon. Now, he can start the slow and grueling process of transforming it into a sellable inkstone. Hyuk-su must first saw the stone into the size he desires. He does this the traditional way. No chainsaws or power tools, just physical force and a handsaw. To avoid injuring himself or damaging the stone, he secures it tightly.
고정시켜주는 거예요, 이렇게. 움직이지 않게.
It's too hard to do alone, so Hyuk-su's friend assists.
띠띠 살면서 그 형님이신데 제 일을 많이 도와주고 있죠.
They push and pull the saw until it's a little over an inch deep, where Hyuk-su can begin to chip away at the parts he doesn't need.
됐어요.
But manipulating this rock doesn't get any easier. Hyuk-su's only tools are chisels, grinding stones, and brushes for dusting debris.
그럼 이걸 날을 또 세워줘야 되잖아요. 그 날을 세우려면 옛날에 낫도 그렇고 다 도구를 다 이 숫돌에 갈았잖아요. 이 숫돌에 갈아서 쓰는 거예요. 이 숫돌 처음 봐요?
네, 저는 처음 봐요.
아, 도시분이시구나. 시구나 이거 다 많이 썼어요.
He does every part of the process with his hands and shoulders. A beautiful inkstone is more valuable, so Hyuk-su micromanages every step to make sure no flaws show up in the finished product. He flattens the bottom so it's perfectly level. Trying to fix it later will risk damaging the design he'll engrave into the other side. Most inkstones have three basic elements: a flat surface to rub the ink stick, a groove where the ink accumulates, and a border where artisans create designs. The flat grinding surface slopes into the collection pool, so the water and ground ink can flow easily. This shape is vital to the inkstone's functionality and value, so it must be perfected.
손 힘으로만 안 되니까 그 힘이 모자르니까 그 어깨로 밀어서 그 힘을 내는 거죠. 오래 하면은 괜찮아요. 굳은 살 내리고 하면은. 아, 어깨가 아무래도 뭐 벌겋게 그 멍도 들고 아프고 그랬죠.
After countless hours of chiseling and scraping, millimeter by millimeter, the surface is complete. Now it's time for the border. Today, Hyuk-soo is working on a relatively simple design, plum blossoms.
아, 이제 요런 꽃잎 같은데 그 꽃잎을 만들려면은 테두리가 얇은데 그런 데에 조심해서 다뤄야지. 그렇지 않으면 아무래도 흠집이 생기죠.
He engraves every minute detail along the border. More intricate designs require more labor and time, so they're more expensive. But while the hardest part is done, Hyuk-soo says the inkstone is not yet worthy of a high price. That happens during polishing, which gives the inkstone its most important property, being smooth yet sharp. Hyuk-soo uses an abrasive stone and sandpaper to polish the inkstone. This creates an overall smooth look, but Hyuk-soo says the process also sharpens the outer layer of stone particles. That way, the stone can grind the inkstick into a fine powder.
그게 복망의 가장 별의 생명이죠.
The sharpness of the stone particles directly impacts how well the inkstone performs, and in turn, its final value.
이 사진이 20배 확대해서 본 사진인데 요 돌 그 입자가 여기 환하게 보이죠. 요게 이거 잘 서 있느냐 들 서 있느냐에 따라서 벼루가 잘 갈리는 겁니다. 이 복망이 잘 서야 벼루가 잘 갈리고 그래. 이게 복망이 안 서면은 먹이 안 갈립니다.
Once he's satisfied with the result, Hyuk-soo applies lacquer for protection and longevity. The inkstone is now ready for sale and use by calligraphers. Vincent Chong is a contemporary calligraphy artist. They use inkstones and inksticks for some of their work, even though liquid ink is popular with modern calligraphers due to its ease of use.
The first thing that I think of is either the sound or the smell of grinding ink.
Vincent says inkstones allow for a level of control that bottled ink can't offer.
So using an inkstone allows you to really tailor the quality of the ink to exactly what you want to do, and it also just seems to work out better always. And whatever additional stuff is in a bottle of ink just isn't quite as nice on the paper. I think at this point you can sort of see that the laborious quality of this process creates some energetic or psychological feeling of preciousness with this little bead of ink that you've worked so diligently to produce, which I guess just makes the experience feel more special.
While Vincent isn't in the position to buy a multi-$1,000 inkstone at the moment, it's something they aspire to.
Yeah, I feel like it would give you this sort of energetic connection to another craftsperson, another artist. And in that regard, I think it just makes the experience a little more special, because so much care has been taken on the part of that artisan just so that you can have this really special experience of your own, in your own art practice, of your own sort of creative, generative kind of practice. I guess that's a little bit scary to use something that's so precious, but it's funny because we're talking so specifically about rocks, and stones have been just around for such a long time, and humans have had this sort of fascination with them for such a long time, that treating them preciously feels really natural, but at the same time, they have this life, and you should sort of allow them to engage with other parts of the physical world in a way that, gives them the generosity that they deserve, having been around so long.
Hyuk-soo similarly admires the preciousness of the stones. He appreciates the properties of Sangsan jasok that make it invaluable to his work and craft.
이게 지금 물속에 있는 돌인데 이게 물속에서 건진 거죠. 이게 물에서 얼마 동안 있었는지를 모르잖아요. 한 달이 있었는지 1년이 있었는지. 보이시죠? 여기 지금 물기가 하나도 없잖아요. 이게 물을 절대 흡수를 안 한다는 거죠. 돌이. 상산 자석.
Sangsan jasok inkstones were considered a luxury product during the Joseon dynasty, which began around 1400. But production died down during the Japanese colonization of Korea in the 1910s. But Hyuk-soo, a third-generation master and one of 4 remaining inkstone artisans in Korea, is putting it back on the map.
스승님께서 2000년도에 여기서 만드시다가 예주로 가시는 바람에 이 상산 자석이 없어지게 됐어요. 그때 생각에는 먹고 사는 데는 지장이 없겠구나 하는 생각에서 시작을 하게 된 거죠. 그러다가 이제 점점 사양길에 들고 그러다 보니까 이제 중간에 그만두게 됐던 거죠. 그래도 제 와이프가 생활 전선에 나서서 도와주는 바람에 이때까지 하게 된 거죠. 상산 자석이라는 유명한 돌이 참 이름이 없어진다는 것에 대해서 안타까웠는데 그래도 제가 이 맥을 잇고 있다는데 보람을 느끼고 있죠.
While much of the inkstone industry has been mechanized, Hyuk-soo believes the only way to keep Sangsan jasok inkstones alive is by making them by hand. And for contemporary calligraphers like Vincent, this tradition is a constant source of inspiration as they make their own space in the long and continuing history of calligraphy.
Being able to reconnect with the brush marks and thus sort of like the bodily gestures of artists of the past, I think was restorative in a way that helped me feel connected to this artistic lineage and culture. Especially as queer and trans people, I feel like it feels so clear that our communities have been at the heart of artistic communities for all of like human history, whether or not we've been erased, whether or not our stories have been passed down. So being able to sort of access those artists who, maybe had, maybe were queer or trans, but we just don't have those stories today. I think being able to access their work through calligraphy was sort of one of the things that drew me to the practice.